Disney theme park characters. Have there been situations where you had to break character? What was the reason? Consequences? 10 plus years ago, my friend was a face character at Disneyland and told me about her friend who was friends with Goofy, which is what you say to people when out of costume to preserve the magic instead of outright saying you're the character. Allegedly, one day, Goofy's shift was over and he was trying to walk to the back area to cool off when a very angry mom started yelling at him because he ignored her son. In reality, he couldn't see them as he was turning to walk away. The lady then called him racist and said that Goofy was ignoring them because they were black. Goofy turned around to greet the child and signed his autograph book and then turned to the mom and slipped up his sleeve to quickly point at his own black skin underneath before walking away. I wasn't a character, but was a cast member. I was walking from backstage into the park. If you've seen the transitions, they are S-shaped to keep people from peeking in. I was pushing a dolly/handcart. The ones we used had two long supports sticking out from the end. As I was going though, Winnie the Pooh was walking in from the other side. I hit him/her square in the leg with it. Hearing Winnie the Pooh say fuck was a pretty damn funny. I was at Disneyland once and the sheriff of Nottingham was fake menacing a child. He reached out to touch the kid's balloon and for some reason it popped. The character actor was clearly stunned. A new balloon appeared less than 30 seconds later. My cousin used to do this when I was a kid. We'd always go try to find her on days we knew she was working. She mostly played Pooh Bear. She would never say out loud Hinugatuk, but she would get very animated and jump around to give us hugs. Occasionally she'd still say things like I have a rumbly in my tummy. I thought I was the coolest kid cause I knew Pooh Bear. I have a close friend who was Woody for a while at Disneyland. He said that one time the float caught on fire during a show and they had to play it off completely in character. They danced around it and had to quickly get it backstage to deal with the problem. He said they played it off well enough that no one seemed to notice/there wasn't any panic. He said he had never seen an instance of anyone breaking character because everyone was very well trained and there's always at least 6 or so cameras that can see you at all times. I also one time offered an unopened water bottle to an employee when it was near 100 degrees and he said if anyone at Disney saw that, he would be fired. They can't take anything from guests. He also mentioned the cameras constantly watching both crew and patrons. Not a character, but my family went to Disney World a few times when I was a kid. My dad was abusive, physically and verbally. We eventually left him when I was 12. He was awful on vacations for just being miserable in general. It was Valentine's Day and my mom, dad, older sister and I were at one of the parks. I don't remember which. All of the characters had big red hearts on a string around their necks. My sister was at oldest 8 and I would have been 6. We had just gotten ice cream and my sister and I were excitedly looking around for our favorite characters. My sister just saw Eeyore, her all-time favorite character, so she turned around and my dad, not paying attention, ran right into my sister holding her ice cream cone and got it on his shirt. He hauls off and smacks her in the side of the face, knocking off her glasses and making her drop her ice cream cone. She starts crying as my mom starts giving him shit while he defended his actions, saying she should have watched where she was going. The next thing we know is my sister is being hugged by Eeyore. It shocked her out of crying and she was suddenly so incredibly happy because Eeyore just kept hugging her while my mom started taking pictures. Eeyore stopped hugging my sister, only to point to his paper heart then to her. Then he hugged her again. There is a picture somewhere in my mom's basement of my sister and I standing with Eeyore, my sister beaming, but clearly looking like she had been crying. I still think about that Eeyore to this day and wondered what they were thinking. It was the early 90s when people were largely still expected to mind their business when it came to such things, and reading these other comments makes me realize he may not have been able to do anything else anyway, but I appreciate his gesture nonetheless. Thanks Eeyore. I wasn't a character, but worked closely with them as a photographer. Disney performers are trained to never break character for whatever reason. They have ways of signaling their character attendant that they are in distress, and it's generally up to the character attendant to avoid any weird or uncomfortable situations. As far as weird situations, they do get people that stalk them in the park. Like some people get in those lines multiple times to get a photo with a specific performer. The weird side of Disney fanatics are something else. Worked at the Disney store in late 87 and 88 in Orange County, circa. I think, at the time, it was like one of only a handful of stores open. The back of the store had a big screen, where we constantly played some Disney video. Every once in a while, the biggest, muscular, blackest, gayest dude would come in and kindly request we play anything Pooh related. He'd then proceed to prance around the store. He came in the evenings, towards closing, and sing the Tigger parts of either dialogue or any song. Turns out he was one of the Tiggers at Disneyland. Dude just loved being Tigger. A few days ago, me, my sister and her friend went to the new Galaxy's Edge area. My sister's friend was around 6 feet 1 inch and had never seen Star Wars. We were walking around and Chewbacca ran up to her. He was around her height and hugged her. Then he put his hand above his head, showing they were both tall. She was super embarrassed, and while we were walking away, he did that fist pump thing. Since then we refer to her as Chewbacca's girlfriend. Seriously the cutest thing ever. A bit late to the thread. Wife doesn't have Reddit, but she's a Disney princess. She has a lot of passion for her job and has never broken character. It's a fireable offense. The girls know that their job is coveted, so they are on their best behavior. If they break character in a bad way, Disney will quickly replace them with another girl going to the monthly auditions. She loves a good dad joke, so one guest made a real clever one while she was meeting his kid, and instead of her in character princess laugh, she genuinely laughed. The stories she tells me are insane, hysterical, sad, and heartwarming. If anyone wants to hear more, she's more than happy to share, omitting any details that'll jeopardize her job. Awesome question. I don't work at a park, but I took some time to look through some older threads for some relevant responses to get the discussion going. /u/thebookgd said, at the mouse we had a kid who had a checklist shirt on. On it said Darth Maul check, Darth Vader check, then the last one beat cancer check. The kid was 6 years old. Then I'm told backstage that the parents wanted to do something special for him in the show. But my director couldn't find a spot in the show where this special moment would work. So we finished the show, GD Training Academy, and set up a meet and greet with the kid. I get out there, and this kid's whole family is at the greeting area. I mean everyone. So I hear, okay champ, you ready? Kid replies yup. He pulls out this pill, swallows it, and the family breaks down crying. The kid yells, I'm a real GD. Come to find out the kid took his last chemo pill that eradicated his cancer in front of us. He waited all morning to show us that he was brave and a true GD. We were all holding back tears. /u/an_the_vortex said, I worked at Club Disney for the brief time it was open. We had codes we used on the radio headsets that were coordinated with character names. For instance, code blue meant there was blood that needed to be cleaned up immediately. One day, I'm taking a stroll around the club to check on things when I spot a small boy about 2 years old taking a massive dump right in the middle of the play area. He sees me, starts to cry, and runs away with no clothing on the lower half of his body. I get on the radio and can't think of what to say as we hadn't discussed a code for human feces in the play area and naked kid running around. So I just called, I have a code poo situation in the play area and piglets on the loose. /u/deleted said, I was sitting with a group of guys by where Mickey and Minnie get dressed. When they came out, the guys started catcalling Minnie. The guy that was Mickey said, in a perfect Mickey voice, if you look at my girlfriend again I'm gonna pop ya. My wife and I went to Disney. We were both 30, and it was my first time ever going to a major theme park. My wife wanted to meet the princesses, so we stand and line and she goes up to get a picture. The Cinderella asks my wife, is that your Prince Charming? My wife said I was. Cinderella asked, how did you meet? My wife paused for a second and said that story is not Disney World appropriate, and Cinderella laughed like a real breaking character laugh for just a second and caught herself. If she was drinking coffee it would have been a spit take. Finally she adds, oh well I bet it was romantic anyway. It's not a great story, but seeing her break character for a genuine laugh is my favorite memory from that trip. And for anyone who wants to know, short version, we met at a party. She was topless on a trampoline. I wouldn't say break, but I was a lifeguard, and I had to ban this kid from going down the water slide. Every single time I told him he had to be feet first, and every time he said okay. But he kept going head first, and it got to the point where the other kids saw him and were copying him. He left and cried to mom and dad, and I explained to mom and dad why. They left and cried to my coordinator, and my coord came back saying that wasn't very magical. I explained after several times of this kid not listening, other kids were copying him. In any case, I got a stern talk to about being the nice lifeguard who explains why versus the mean lifeguard who just yells orders. Later that day, that kid was running across the deck, despite several requests not to, tripped and ate concrete. Don't hate me, because I don't feel bad. WDW character department at Magic Kingdom many years ago. I can't remember breaking character, but I do remember working the restaurant at the Contemporary for dinners. One time we had a Make-A-Wish kid as a guest, and they were just the most awesome kid, and it was just heartbreaking to know why they were there. So our lead let us do a group hangout with a kid for something like an hour in costume, playing and running around and having fun. You could never play like that in the parks. You'd start a kid riot. No consequences. We just all hoped we made that little kid happy. Bonus fun fact, the goofy costume for the electric light parade was worn by a float driver. Because the driver was seated, no pants with that costume, just the glittery top and head and gloves. One of the traditions for our college sorority back in the ATS was that the day after initiation, all the new members and their big sisters would go to Disneyland sporting their brand new letters to wear. One of the costume characters in the parade kept throwing gang signs or something at us, and we were so confused. Turns out it was one of our sisters who had to work that day. She was trying to do our sorority's hand symbol, but with her hands in oversized furry gloves it didn't show up so well, lol. A bit late, but I did the college program at WDW. Never saw a character break when I worked audience control for parades. Definitely saw a few fully costumed characters puke in their heads, and Prince Naveen once got heat exhaustion and managed to leave the parade route fully in character. Once the parade was over, we saw him in the back almost completely passed out. Typically the parade will just speed up to double time if a character actor is in distress. A face performer broke character for my husband and I. I won't say which park, but we took a trip to Disney about 2 months after our infant son died. He was our first. Our entire nursery was Neville and / Peter Pan themed. We always wanted to take him to Disney, have him meet Peter. Well, he couldn't. I got a memorial tattoo, an exact replica of my son's hospital ink handprint, and we got a picture of Peter Pan with the tattoo. We were alone with him and his handler. I tearfully explained the situation before asking him to pose with my arm. He took lots of photos with my tattoo and us, and afterward he hugged me tight, told me he was proud of me and God bless us, and he was so sorry for our loss. It was amazing, emotional, and I'll never forget that Peter Pan was proud of me for finding the strength to keep on living. It honestly meant the world. I'm so glad he broke character. I'll always treasure those photos and that memory. My neighbor, he died a couple of years ago, so I'm safe in telling this, worked at Disney for years. One day he was stocking shelves in a gift shop and came around the corner and nearly ran into none other than Paul and Linda McCartney. Before he could stop himself, he loudly exclaimed, "Holy shit, it's the McCartneys." He immediately realized how big of a breach of Disney cast member etiquette he had committed and turned 12 shades of red, but before anything bad could happen, Paul and Linda just smiled and laughed and introduced themselves. Apparently they were wonderfully laid back about such things and quite used to surprised reactions when people recognize them in public. He didn't get into any trouble. His boss saw the whole episode and thought it was hilarious, and I think they both signed a hat or something for him as they were checking out. Visitant from last year here. On the Halloween night, I've seen 2 female employees working on the store, not characters though, clearly upset by some kind of superior order. The exact dialogue was, "Yeah, sometimes it gets hard." I know it does, but that attitude was unacceptable. I didn't resist, and I said I guess even in Disney working sometimes sucks. The first girl immediately stood up and smiled as bright as she could. What do you mean? Working here is awesome every time. I couldn't help but feel that she was agreeing with me, but never breaking the happy land face. Awesome place. My mom was a costumed character for a couple of years at Disneyland. She was very committed to keeping character, but there was one instance where she broke character. 2 teens jumped her when she was playing Piglet and started beating her. At first she just tried to block and defend herself, but at one point she knocked one of the boys to the ground and pinned him. Considering my mom's only 4 minutes and 10 seconds and was wearing 50 lbs of costume, I consider that fairly impressive. The other kid continued to assault her, and I think she may have yelped or cried out because the kid she had pinned heard her and said, "Oh shit, it's a chick." Like, no shit, dumb fuck. Most of the shorter characters are women because, well, they are shorter. Cast members came to help her and the kids were banned from the park. My mom got in a lot of trouble for that too, though, because she broke character. I think she was suspended for a couple days. So, story time. I have 3 cousins who have been Disney princesses, 2 of which are still at it. About a year ago my grandparents decided to go visit one of my cousins out at Disneyland Tokyo. My grandpa has relatively advanced Alzheimer's, but he is generally easy to handle. Anyway, somehow he got separated from my grandma and started to panic a little looking for anyone he knew. Turns out the first person he found that he recognized was my cousin in full Cinderella character. They allow the characters to come out and walk around the park in Tokyo because the Japanese are super respectful. He started to talk to my cousin, calling her by her real name and quite directly asking her where his wife/her parents were. He started to get pretty angry and frustrated when she wouldn't give him a straight answer. She kept character as best she could, but her handlers whisked her away pretty rapidly. He was reunited with the rest of the group soon after, but it was quite the scene.